It's time. Grizzlies Nation single game tickets for the 21-22 season are on sale right now at grizzlies.com/tickets or by calling 1-800-4-NBA-TICKS. Don't miss Ja, Jaren, and your next gen Grizz as they battle the Lakers, Nets, Warriors, and more, starting at just $10 per game. Plus, get your seats to celebrate Grizzlies legends Zach Randolph and Tony Allen's retirement nights. Get your tickets, get the biggest nights, get the best giveaways. For more information, visit grizzlies.com.
Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, my goodness! Allen. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone! Memphis on top. 17. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took exception to something. The officials break it up quickly.
See, he just locked his arm and then kind of pulled him over. Zach falls down, and then, you know what, a little elbow there.
Oh, he's digging the elbow in.
Yeah, you know.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about some training camp news. Also, I'm going to play an excerpt of an interview I did on my other podcast, Fast Break Breakfast with John Hollinger. I don't know how many of you out there listen to both of my podcasts. If you don't listen to Fast Break Breakfast, you just definitely need to, at the very least, go back and listen to the most recent episode where John Hollinger is on. We talk about Justice Winslow. We talk about the Grizzlies making trades to free up playing time for D'Anthony Melton. We talk about the communication between front offices and the coaching staff over players that the front office thinks should maybe play more, and those awkward communications, again, based on his personal experience that he's had. I ask him about letting Zach Randolph and Tony Allen go. It's about a 25-minute interview over on Fast Break Breakfast. I'm going to play about half of it for you later on this episode, so if you want the full thing, definitely go check out the most recent episode of Fast Break Breakfast to hear all of the talk I had with John Hollinger. I hope you guys out there in the Memphis area are getting geared up to go to the Grizzlies open practice on Sunday. The open practice is at 1:30. I believe they have a party out on the FedEx Forum Plaza about 12:30. So definitely go out there. Report back what you see. I don't think it's streaming online anywhere for us to watch it for those of us who aren't in the Memphis area, but maybe it'll give us some good insight into which lineups are playing together, and we'll have a good grasp on what the rotation might be. I've started doing my borderline nuts thing where I watch every Grizzlies training camp highlight video frame by frame, trying to piece together who's playing with who in the 5-on-5 portions, in the scrimmage portions. Yes, this might be a sign of derangement, but I'll say it's been useful previously in trying to determine, the starters and the second unit. And I think based on just the tiny bit of video they've released, that we can make some decent guesses about the starting lineup. And obviously there's not that many options. I mean, we know Ja and Jaren and Dylan are going to start, and we're pretty sure Steven Adams is going to start. So the last spot comes down to Bane or Kyle Anderson. I don't think Melton is in consideration. I think, interestingly, it's just a coincidence, I'm sure, that Dez and Kyle don't really appear in any of the training camp videos. And again, we're talking about like a total of 70 seconds worth of video. You can see the top of Desmond Bane's head, and yes, conspiracy theorist Keith says that's enough for me to say, you know what? I think he's probably running with the starting five. I'm guessing the Grizzlies are going to start Desmond Bane. I think the second unit, it's going to be Tyus Jones, D'Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Brandon Clark, and Xavier Tillman. I think that's an awesome second five. Now, I know the huge question is, are they going to work in Zaire Williams? I wouldn't be surprised if they go 11 deep to start the season, where Zaire plays like 7, 8, 9 minutes or something like that as the 11th guy. But I feel pretty confident that we're going to see something in that vein. The only 5-man unit that we've seen in any of these training camp videos so far, it's like the bottom 5. We've seen Sam Merrill, Chris Dunn, Jarrett Culver, Sante Aldama, and Yves Pons playing together. That's the only complete 5-man unit that showed up in one of these videos. And obviously, all these highlights could come from like a 5-minute span of practice. So the sample size is very, very small. But because this worked out before, last offseason and in the break between the 2020 season during the COVID break going into the bubble, I think like if you see the guys lining up usually playing together, like we see Tyus and Melton on the same team. We see Chris Dunn and Melton on the same team. I'm guessing those are second unit guys getting their second unit reps together. If I see a lot of Jaren and Ja in the navy blue and then, Dylan's in the navy blue, I'm guessing those are the first unit guys. And you see guys subbed in. You see, Conchar, Merrill, also navy blue. But I'm just guessing that they are practicing in the units that I think they will probably most normally play. And Taylor Jenkins has already said he had a good idea of, what the rotation is going to look like and who the starters are going to be. I don't think there's going to be any revelations in practice. I don't think any of the returning guys is going to have changed that much where Taylor Jenkins is like, oh, wow, I was totally wrong. Brandon Clark is amazing now. He's going to start. I don't think that's very likely. I also don't think any of the new guys are going to be like, oh my goodness, Zaire Williams is so much further along than we anticipated, or I didn't know Chris Dunn was this good. So I don't think we'll see a big shakeup there. But again, we have a preseason game coming up on Tuesday. We will get a good view of this. There's the open practice on Sunday. Hopefully get some more information. And you don't have to just rely on the ravings of a lunatic trying to parse together what the rotation is going to look like based on social media posts. Also in Grizzlies news, the FedEx Forum has announced they're going to require everyone attending any event there starting October 20th to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test, plus obviously masks for everybody. The team announced that. They said they did a survey with all their season ticket holders, and a super majority of them said that's what they preferred. Obviously, the county health departments recommend that. So despite the objections of some people, that is going to be in effect for the Grizzlies. They become, I believe, the 16th team now to require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test for admittance into the home games. As far as the NBA players themselves, they said when training camp started that about 90% of the players have been vaccinated. If we're basing that off of the training camp rosters, that's about 540 of the 600 players. And they've said in the last week they're up to 95%. So that means, just doing the math, 30 more players have gotten vaccinated. There are a handful of notable holdouts or people who have loudly said that they're not going to be vaccinated, but I would assume this gets up to like 97, 98%, and it does end up being like 10 guys who choose not to get vaccinated. And finally, before I play the clip of John Hollinger, some new Grizzlies jerseys leaked online on Thursday night. The source is very reputable. They've gotten jersey leaks correct before. They got the Stacks jerseys correct last year for the Grizzlies. The Twitter account, camisas.nba, I believe it's a Brazilian account, but they're very good at getting new jersey leaks. And it looks like the Grizzlies their city jerseys this year will be navy blue with white lettering that resembles the lettering for most of the Grizzlies run. Like if you think of a traditional Mike Miller, Pau Gasol, Mike Conley navy blue jersey, it's similar lettering to that. They've added the trim that's similar to the current light blue jerseys where it's that MEM that kind of resembles the Vancouver tribal pattern. I know I'm trying to describe a picture in an audio format. I've posted the tweet over on my Fast Break account. You can see it there, and I'm guessing we will see something from the team very, very soon now that this thing is released. I like the jersey quite a bit. I'm not a huge fan of the Grizzlies' regular home, away, and association jerseys. I think it's a nice touch. Maybe it is just the resemblance to older Grizzlies jerseys that I like more. I like this yellow trim and the navy, so they look pretty good. I'm guessing, I have no inside knowledge. I don't know this to be a fact, but just based on the track record of this guy who has the jersey leak and looking at the design, I'm guessing that is probably a legitimate new Grizzlies jersey. Maybe they'll make an announcement before the Grizzlies' first game on Tuesday. Don't miss it. It's on Tuesday, October 5th at 7 p.m., and it's a home game, and you can still get tickets right now. They're hosting the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. To purchase your tickets or for more information, log on to Grizzlies.com or call 901-888-HOOP. Anyway, all right, now I'm going to play a clip from Fast Break Breakfast with me talking to former Grizzlies Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, John Hollinger. How's the relationship between a front office and a coaching staff, and how can you apply that maybe to what you see with the Grizzlies right now as far as the synergy based on if it's playing time and lineup combinations used with players? How much on the same page are they?
I mean, it varies, sure. And it can vary at different times within the same coaching tenure. So, we had 4 different coaches while I was there, 4 very distinct personalities. I think from a front office perspective, it's probably better to communicate priorities rather than specifics.
Sure.
In other words, to use an obvious example, we took Jaren Jackson with the 4th pick. Probably shouldn't be getting DNPs, right? The master of the obvious. To use a master of the obvious example.
Not just DNPs. What are the feelings? So I remember this actually specifically railing on Twitter against. I was like, I wish JB Bickerstaff would perhaps close games with Jaren because he clearly seems to be one of the best players. In that situation, you're like, all right, does this guy have to earn fourth quarter minutes? What are we doing there? And so what's your opinion on that situation?
Yeah, that one's a little tougher because you want to empower your coach to read the game and react situationally to what's happening. But when you see a larger trend line, that can be a difficult conversation because we're basically telling the coach is what you think he's doing is dumb, right? At the end of the day. And so I think it's important to, one, have enough equity in the relationship from the word go that you can have those kinds of conversations without the coach feeling attacked. It's basic, human relations 101, right?
Right.
And then, having hopefully enough information to back up what you think. You got to read the room a little bit too, though, in terms of understanding if there are other reasons besides the reasons you think for why something is happening. Because there are definitely times where you'll hear an explanation that's coming from a completely different place than you were perceiving the problem. Just because the coaches are looking at not completely different, but they're just looking at the chessboard very differently than you are. They just are.
Right.
They're thinking a lot in terms of, a lot of times they're thinking in terms of locker room dynamics or in terms of, well, if I do this in the first quarter, then what does that do to me in the third quarter? Or 10 different other things that you might not be thinking of in the moment when you're like, why is this dude in the game right now?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that. And I think, part of a good working relationship is being able to hear your coach out and say, okay, maybe I'll back off a little on this one, or conversely, knowing when to say, okay, I hear you, but here's the thing, and this is why this is important to us. And
I know what Jermichael Green is.
It's a political relationship at the end. At the end of the day, it's a human back and forth, and everyone's territorial in their own way. The same way. I'm sure coaches are like, "Why'd they trade for this guy? He sucks."
Right.
Right. So it goes both ways. But I think at the end of the day, just build. You have to establish through the course of the time you're together, that relationship and that back and forth. So that you can have that conversation, and so it's not an ambush when you do have it.
Yeah. Projecting that to what's going on currently with the Grizzlies, they seem, this current regime seems to act like they're all on the same page, and, they agree on whatever lineups and player acquisition. But me and like all the Grizzlies fans I communicate with a lot, like we're all convinced they traded Grayson Allen just so Taylor Jenkins would stop playing Grayson Allen so much. I know there's obviously, he's an expiring contract. They got some picks for him, but we're like last year, this is like an unhealthy obsession of mine. It's the D'Anthony Melton. It's like, well, D'Anthony Melton is great. Why aren't we playing D'Anthony Melton? We have 2 years of data. Like I'm looking at it from this fan perspective of, all right, Cleaning the Glass tells me they're plus 10 per 100 possessions when Melton and Ja play together. They're plus 15 when they play together with Dylan Brooks. That makes sense. Why aren't we ever playing this? Like, what's the part of the chessboard that maybe I'm not seeing for why that like never comes into fruition?
I mean, I don't know exactly what happened last year. I mean, I was a little surprised at times that Allen seemed to be playing at times instead of Melton. There are times as a front office where that's a decision you might need to make, where you say, if we just trade this guy, or and hopefully you actually have the option to do it, because if the guy's a bad player, then you can't trade him either, right? So,
right. Well, like Grayson's a functional player, but we're all right, we have these younger guys who I think seem more exciting.
Though, I mean, I think I don't know if the Allen trade was specifically targeted toward that as much as the the Grizzlies. I was just writing about Portland before I did this. The Grizzlies had so many players in that like 6'4", 6'5" shooting guard rate. I mean, surely they had to trade somebody, right? They just had too many guys. So, and based on what I've heard, they were kind of canvassing the league, just trying to find out what everyone's value was. And I think just ended up taking the best deal for where they are right now. So I don't know if this was like specifically targeted to substitution patterns, or more was just a general thinning of the herd that needed to happen.
Yeah, I still believe, and I feel like we've made this joke a lot that it was like the Moneyball scene where it's you can't start this guy anymore. I've traded him now, and that's what, again, I think most people I talk to, and maybe I live in a weird sheltered corner of like Grizzlies fandom where we're like, good, we get to play Bane and Melton. That seems like a positive step for the Grizzlies. Based on your time, were there any acquisitions where you were like, hey, we got this guy to do this thing, why aren't you letting this guy do his thing?
Probably happened once or twice. Yeah. I could probably think of a couple scenarios where we got a guy and it just, the two guys I'm thinking of in particular ended up filling the role that we saw for them. It just took a while. And so, sometimes coaches like have to get used to a guy and doesn't totally occur to them right away what the best usage is for that guy. So sometimes a guy in a new team, it can just take a little bit to really slot them into that right place.
Are there specifics? Can I throw names at you?
I don't want to leave any tire marks here. I got you.
I remember at least wondering a lot, going back to like when Ed Davis was on the team.
Sure.
It's like, it seems like we should free Ed Davis a little bit and play. I remember this is one of the earliest, when I finally like got maybe more seriously into following the NBA. I remember tracking like the Grizzlies' 1-loss record when Ed Davis played over 15 minutes. And I remember being like, the Grizzlies are 19-2 when this guy plays 14 minutes in a game. Like, why doesn't he ever get a little more playing time? So, but we don't have to do specifics. That's totally fine. I also wonder, as a front office, what are the difficulties considering like sunken cost, or like you've invested in something? Because I think of right now, last year, the Grizzlies put a lot of resources into acquiring Justice Winslow.
Yeah.
And they paid Dion Waiters' salary for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. They had him on the team. And then last year was a huge disappointment for Justice Winslow. But on one hand, you're like, well, they played him 80 minutes with Ja Morant total.
Yeah.
That's all they needed to see. And they're like, all right, let's move on. That experiment didn't work. So like, what's the difficulty, or like, how do you factor in? Do you have to ignore like the price you paid for something like Justice Winslow?
Yeah. I mean, sunk costs are definitely a real thing in the NBA. I mean, you definitely see, I mean, just with guys with guaranteed contracts or not making rosters, right? Or, you'll see it, especially, year 2 or year 3 with a guy that a team invested a lot in, they'll probably still ride it out longer. First round picks actually are a perfect example. Like, how many teams just, pick up those 3rd and 4th year options no matter what, even if they know it's not happening. So I do think that is a real thing in the league. I thought the Grizzlies last year had a really interesting situation with Winslow, because he hadn't really played and the team was doing fine without him, but they had to at least find out based on the investment they made. And I'm sure that, would be an example of probably a difficult coach front office conversation, because especially when Winslow started playing and it was pretty clear it wasn't happening. Right. And how long do we ride this out? Is it worth missing the playoffs to find out if this guy can play or not? Right. Because that was almost where it was headed. Right.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think they ended up navigating that pretty well, all things considered, where they got enough information to know it wasn't worth picking up the option. But they still didn't torpedo their season collecting that information. So I think it probably ended up in the right place. I'm sure I don't have any inside information here, but I'm sure there were some uncomfortable conversations along the way to that point.
My confusion from watching this from afar with that situation was, did the front office think we got Justice Winslow to be a ball handler, or did we get him to be just kind of like a wing, like a connective piece alongside maybe your better players, alongside Ja and Jonas, or when Jaren plays? And so my thinking was, I think of Winslow as like a defender, a wing, a guy who could fit nicely alongside like Kyle Anderson and Dylan Brooks at the same time. That's a very formidable defense, some optionality on offense, maybe a little lacking, obviously, on shooting. And like, Justice didn't make any shots. That's a big part of it. Like, he made no shots last year, but still, like, the question was, did the front office or the coaching staff say, we got him to run our second unit as a point guard? Because that deployment seemed so strange to me, as opposed to just let Justice find his feet being the 4th option on with some of the better players.
Yeah. I mean, that was a little interesting. I mean, his best stretch probably of his career came when he was playing as like a pseudo point guard in Miami. So I think some of that played into it. And then the idea that you can play these big lineups with him as a point, and you can switch and do things that you can't do with Tyus Jones. So I'm sure that mentality was part of it too. But I still think at the end of the day, the main reason for the trade wasn't to find a different backup point guard, right? It was it was that he could be a starting caliber wing with size, which that you can see they're still out there hunting for by some of the other moves they've made. And so to your point, you could have played him more with Ja Morant. I just think his inability to shoot just torpedoed that from the word go.
All right, so that was about half the conversation that I had with John Hollinger. If you want to hear the full thing, including the part where I ask him about the decision to move on from Tony Allen and Zach Randolph, you have to go and listen to the last episode of Fast Break Breakfast. I appreciate you checking out this episode, though, and I'll be back next week. And basketball is so soon. I am so excited to see the Grizzlies play. Going to be a very exciting year, I feel like. Anyway, have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.